What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, December 18th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 12:43 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Venezuela. But first, I wanted to update you guys on 3i Atlas. So, recent scientific observations of the interstellar object 3i Atlas, the third such object ever detected passing through our solar system, have revealed a series of unexpected and dramatic changes in its appearance as it moved towards its closest approach to Earth on December 19th, 2025. That's tomorrow. The object has transitioned from a typical dusty red hue to a vivid emerald green and even displayed an anomalous electric blue signature near its perihelion in late October 2025. So tomorrow, 3i Atlas will be making its closest approach to Earth, and I will be monitoring the situation live. But this is very, very unusual. 3i Atlas has changed its color 3 times already, going from red to blue to green. So that is definitely not normal for a comet. High-resolution instruments, including the Gemini North Telescope and the Lowell Discovery Telescope, have captured the transformation of 3i Atlas. After passing closest to the Sun on October 29th, 3i Atlas developed a green halo, and observations from satellites like GOES 19 and SOHO indicated the comet appeared significantly bluer than the Sun as it neared perihelion. This is unusual for a comet which typically reflect sunlight as redder due to dust scattering. This blue phase may indicate intense gas emission, such as cyanogen, dominating over dust reflection. The object has brightened faster than typical solar system comets in the green band of the spectrum. Its brightness increased by approximately 5 times, indicating significant outgassing or even the loss of up to 13% of its mass near the Sun. Observations from July through December 2025 have consistently shown an anti-tail, a spike of material appearing to point directly towards the Sun. This is often explained by the ejection of larger, heavier dust particles less affected by solar winds. So this is very, very strange. Okay, changing its color multiple times, not behaving like a typical comet would, and then the anti-tail. So typically comets have a tail behind them, sort of like when you watch a plane flying through the sky, you have the contrail behind the plane. Well, this thing had a tail in front of it. Okay, so imagine looking at a plane flying over your house and you see a contrail in front of the plane instead of in back of the plane, or both. That is very, very strange. So I'm going to be live tomorrow. I'm going to be monitoring this approach of 3i Atlas close to us. Every single telescope and observatory around the world is going to be pointed at this thing. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of information we get out of this. And last night we had multiple F-18 fighter jets off the coast of Venezuela again for the third or fourth night in a row. And then we also had more E-18 Growlers, which are electronic attack planes of the U.S. Navy. These planes can suppress GPS systems, radio communications, and radars. And what's interesting about last night is one of these F-18 fighter jets came within just 30 or 40 miles of the capital of Venezuela, Caracas, and it was just hanging out there all night long and doing multiple loops here right off the coast of Caracas. So clearly a sign from Trump to the Maduro regime, trying to scare Maduro, put pressure on him. But look at this, guys. This is just totally insane. And we also had more C-17 U.S. military cargo planes going down to Puerto Rico. Here you can see two of them going down to Puerto Rico last night. And then we also had another U.S. Navy recon drone go down from Jacksonville Naval Air Station in Florida to the Caribbean. So you can see that one right here. So the situation is escalating in the Caribbean. And also last night we had something very unusual in the Black Sea. There were two U.S. and NATO recon drones patrolling the Black Sea. We had a U.S. Air Force recon drone hanging out here in the western Black Sea, and it actually went all the way into the central Black Sea, and it was looking straight into Crimea. And then we also had a NATO recon drone in the western Black Sea at the same time. So something could go down tonight or tomorrow or this weekend in Ukraine. My guess is Russia's planning a massive counterattack against Ukraine as punishment for Ukraine blowing up that submarine in the port of Novorossiysk in the eastern Black Sea. Okay, so the Russian sub that was blown up by a Ukrainian drone, I think Russia is going to try to retaliate for that. So it could happen tonight. I will be going live tonight, so make sure you have your notifications set up, and I will be live tomorrow to monitor 3i Atlas and also the Epstein files release. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from NYPrepper Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video. We also have some very concerning news coming out of Estonia. Estonia says 3 Russian border guards illegally crossed into Estonian territory on the Narva River near the town of Vasknarva on Wednesday morning. So 3 Russian border guards walked into Estonia, okay? And the Washington Post is reporting that there was some kind of high-level meeting yesterday in the Trump administration that could have led to new orders for U.S. naval and air forces in the Caribbean, with more forceful U.S. naval operations expected in the coming days. And they cited a person familiar with the matter. And Maduro spoke by phone with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, warning of an escalation of threats after Washington announced a total blockade on sanctioned oil tankers, and Venezuela has requested an emergency meeting at the UN Security Council to discuss ongoing U.S. aggression. And last night there was video footage coming out of Northern Virginia showing a bunch of F-22 stealth fighters taking off in 3 waves of approximately 2 to 4 jets from Langley Air Force Base, accompanied by at least one KC-135 Stratotanker. So I don't know if they were there to provide security for Trump during his address from the White House last night. I highly doubt that they would have F-22s just for an address from the White House. My guess is this is probably related to Venezuela, and they're moving F-22s down to the Caribbean for strikes on Venezuela. And after Trump threatened a total and complete blockade on sanctioned Venezuelan tankers, Venezuela sent Navy escorts to protect its ships leaving its ports. And apparently the U.S. knows about the escorts and is weighing options, but hasn't said what comes next. Maduro says exports will continue at all costs. So Maduro, just like Putin, is reliant on the revenue from oil, okay? It keeps his regime alive, just like Putin's regime. So he's not going to suddenly stop exporting oil because that's how he survives, okay? So the Venezuelan Navy is now protecting these tankers, so that could potentially cause a war between Venezuela and the U.S., even if the U.S. does not strike the land in Venezuela. It could lead to, let's say, the Venezuelan Navy opening fire on the U.S. Navy, and then the U.S. Navy would have to sink the Venezuelan Navy ships that are protecting these oil tankers. And Maduro is asking Colombia to form a union with Venezuela. Maduro said, "The military of Colombia, whom I know very well, I call on you to a perfect union with Venezuela so that no one dares to touch the sovereignty of our countries." And Maduro also said a regime change is being pushed in Venezuela to impose a puppet government that wouldn't last 48 hours, one that would hand over our constitution's sovereignty and resources. That will never happen. Venezuela will never be a colony of anyone. Wow. So accusing the U.S. of basically wanting to make Venezuela a vassal country. And the Venezuelan defense minister said on Wednesday that it will not be intimidated by the threats from the U.S. president. He said, "We will tell the United States government and its president that your crude and arrogant threats do not intimidate us," said Vladimir Lopez, the defense minister. "The dignity of this homeland is non-negotiable and will not be intimidated by absolutely anyone." Okay, so Venezuela showing defiance in the face of U.S. threats. The defense minister and Maduro not backing down, and the Venezuelan military now protecting their oil tankers. And Venezuela's state-owned oil company says that oil exports continue normally following the announcement by U.S. President Trump of a blockade on Venezuelan oil tankers. And check this out, the Trump administration has reportedly begun asking American-based oil companies, including but not limited to Exxon, ConocoPhillips, Halliburton, and Weatherford, if they would be interested in returning operations to Venezuela once Maduro has been removed from power. Wow. So like I said, guys, this is about the oil, okay? The oil, and also there's some gold in Venezuela, actually quite a bit of gold in the Amazon basin in general, but Trump wants that oil, okay? It's a no-brainer if you think about it. Venezuela sits on top of one of the largest oil reserves in the world besides the Middle East. I think Venezuela's number 2 after the Middle East. So imagine if the U.S. kicks out Maduro, which would accomplish 2 things. Number 1, it would remove Chinese and Russian influence in Latin America in a major way. I mean, you would still have Cuba and Nicaragua, but Cuba and Nicaragua don't have that same influence like Venezuela does. Venezuela has the oil, and they're a large country. So by getting rid of Maduro, Trump would be getting rid of Putin and Xi Jinping in our backyard. And then on top of that, we would get oil from Venezuela. Okay, imagine all these American oil companies exploring for oil in Venezuela, how that would lower our fuel prices here in the U.S. Okay, we wouldn't be reliant as much on OPEC. Okay. And Trump made comments about Venezuela yesterday. He said it's a blockade, not going to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through. They took all of our oil. They illegally took it. We want it back. Okay, so Trump once again making the case, just like he did initially when he announced the blockade on social media, that somehow Venezuela took our oil. So basically, he was saying that there were American companies in Venezuela that were drilling for oil there, and Maduro kicked out the American companies, which is actually true. They did do that, at least most of them. Some of the remaining ones have to pay some big royalty fees to Maduro, okay? But he's saying that somehow that was our oil and we want it back. So he's making the case that we deserve the Venezuelan oil and we're going to go in and take it. You guys, you remember when Trump said multiple times, over and over, the first time he was running for president, how we should have taken the oil in Iraq when we went to war in the Middle East? He said over and over that we went into Iraq, but we didn't even take the oil. He criticized Bush about that. So that just shows you where his mind is, okay? He's a businessman, and he's looking at this from an economic standpoint, okay? This massive oil reserve, literally right in our backyard, that we could tap into, okay? And the House of Representatives voted down 2 Democrat-led resolutions aimed at curbing Trump's military actions against suspected drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean and potential hostilities involving Venezuela. One resolution, led by Representative Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, sought to halt U.S. strikes on drug boats unless Congress authorizes them. The administration has justified at least 25 strikes by labeling several Latin American cartels as terrorist groups. The measure failed 210 to 216. So that's not a lot, guys. It only failed by 6 votes. Okay, a measure that would force Trump to get congressional approval every time he wants to strike boats. And a second resolution introduced by Representative Jim McGovern, Democrat from Massachusetts, would have required congressional approval for any U.S. military action in or against Venezuela, and that resolution failed 211 to 213, so only by 2 votes, guys. That's really close. If they reintroduce these resolutions again in the coming months, I think that it's possible they may pass. We'll have to wait and see. And Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, criticized a military attack on Venezuela, saying, quote, "Do we truly believe that Nicolas Maduro will be replaced by a modern-day George Washington? How did that work out in Cuba, Libya, Iraq, and Syria? Previous presidents told us to war over weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that the drugs are the weapons of mass destruction. This is about oil and regime change." Wow. So a Republican from Kentucky sharply criticizing Trump for wanting to attack Venezuela, saying it's about oil and regime change, and, you know, mentioning how Trump labeled fentanyl weapon of mass destruction, which would essentially give Trump a blank check in terms of strikes on Latin America, okay? And allies of President Trump, including Senator Rick Scott, Republican from Florida, are working to invite Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Machado to the White House. Now, if you remember, she fled from Venezuela like 2 weeks ago. And they said, oh, it's because she's going to Norway for the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony. BS, guys. Okay, she had to flee by like a rowboat. She broke her vertebrae. There was like a private security contractor that was hired by the U.S. government to exfiltrate her from Venezuela. She had to sneak through like 20 security checkpoints. Okay, so yeah, it's not because of a Nobel Peace Prize ceremony. They're getting her out of there because she's going to run the country after they remove Maduro from power. And my suspicion is that this is going to kick off probably in early 2026. It could be in January or February that these operations are going to kick off in Venezuela. I don't think we're going to see anything major before the holidays because Trump is a businessman and he doesn't want to affect anybody's holiday travel plans. He knows that a lot of people fly to the Caribbean for vacations this time of year. And, you know, it's the holidays. The last thing the American people want to hear right before Christmas and New Year's is that we're starting a war with Maduro. I don't think he's going to do it before the holidays. I think it's going to happen in early 2026, okay? And I think they're going to go in, get rid of Maduro, put Machado in his place, and then we're going to start drilling for oil over there. That's what's going to happen. And the National Assembly of Ecuador approved a resolution to support the detention of Maduro, and the Mexican president has called for peace and dialogue between the U.S. and Venezuela. And the Russian foreign minister said that Russia is concerned about what the Pentagon is doing in the Caribbean. And Israeli officials are examining intelligence from recent days that suggests an Iranian connection to the murder of the MIT professor, the senior nuclear scientist. So maybe the Iranians took him out. And U.S. and Russian officials are expected to meet in Miami this weekend. The U.S. delegation is expected to include Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, while Russia may send Kirill Dmitriev. He's the main negotiator for the Russian side, and he's buddies with Witkoff. Ukrainian officials are expected to consult with Washington ahead of the meeting, so it doesn't look like the Ukrainians will be there, just the Russians. And that's why we saw that Russian plane flying into the U.S. a couple days ago, and everybody was freaking out about that. I told you because of the meeting in Miami, and I was right once again. And the U.S. is preparing new sanctions targeting Russia's energy trade, including its shadow fleet of oil tankers, if Putin refuses a peace agreement with Ukraine. Measures could be announced as soon as this week, though the final decision rests with Trump. And Ukraine's economy is near bankruptcy. Ukraine risks a severe economic crisis without 137 billion euros in external funding for 2026 to 2027. European leaders are now debating unprecedented measures to prevent state insolvency while sustaining Ukraine's war effort. Okay, so the difference between Russia and Ukraine is that Russia has all the oil and natural gas that they can sell to India, China, Iran, all these different countries, but especially India and China. Those countries have billions and billions of people, okay? So all Russia has to do is maintain their oil and gas sales to China and India, and that can fuel their war machine forever. Okay, Ukraine does not have anything like that. The closest thing they had was grain that they were exporting to Europe and through the Black Sea to the Middle East and Africa. Okay, but that's not enough. It's not like oil and gas where you can extract year-round massive quantities. Okay. And the Russian defense minister said that preparations have begun by NATO forces for an armed confrontation with Russia by 2030. The Russian defense minister said the policies of European countries and NATO are creating real preconditions for the continuation of military actions in 2026. The key task for next year is to maintain and increase the current pace of the offensive. So he's talking about the Ukraine war in that situation. So Russia is going to increase the pace of the offensive in Ukraine. And he's accusing NATO of preparing for war with Russia. Now, Russia has massed 350,000 troops in Belarus. This was announced yesterday. Okay, that is insane. The Russian defense minister also said that more than 70% of the thermal power plants and 37% of hydroelectric power plants in Ukraine have been put out of operation. Wow. And Putin said yesterday that the Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile will be placed on combat duty by the end of the year. And we also know that Russia has deployed these Oreshniks into Belarus, but they're not quite ready yet. But they will be ready by the end of this year in Belarus, and we'll see if the U.S. matches this deployment and puts something in Poland, or maybe gives Poland nuclear sharing. We'll have to wait and see. We know that Trump really likes Poland and is very good friends with Polish ex-president Duda and the new president, who's conservative. And Putin also said that Russia is acquiring new means of destruction that will not appear anywhere else in the world. Wow. And Putin said that after the Soviet Union collapsed, we believed we would quickly join the civilized Western world. Today, it seems there is no civilization there, only degradation, so taking a swipe at the West. He also said, as before, we are ready to conduct negotiations and resolve all emerging issues by peaceful means. The U.S. administration is demonstrating such readiness. We hope the same will happen in Europe. He also said that we did not start the war in 2022. In essence, the West itself unleashed this war. And the German defense contractor Rheinmetall plans to sell off its civilian business divisions and concentrate on providing weapons strictly for the Ministry of Defense in Germany and exporting. Okay, so that's a big sign that Germany and Europe are preparing for war. Okay, the major defense contractor Rheinmetall is no longer going to be producing any civilian equipment, okay, for the civilian market. And Poland will start mass producing landmines next year to place along their border with Russia and Belarus after they fully withdraw from the Ottawa Convention, which bans anti-personnel mines. So that is a huge sign that something is about to go down. And apparently this is the first time that Poland has started mass producing anti-personnel landmines since Poland was a communist country, part of the Eastern Bloc. Okay. And the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, said that Italy will not be deploying troops into Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping force. And we know that Russia has warned against Europe doing that, and they said that they would be legitimate military targets. And Taiwan said that the U.S. is moving ahead with an $11 billion arms package, the largest ever for Taiwan, which includes HIMARS rockets, howitzers, drones, and anti-tank weapons. The sale is now under U.S. congressional review and is the second one approved under Trump's current term. So Trump is arming up Taiwan like crazy. And China has secretly built a prototype extreme ultraviolet lithography machine, the most advanced tool needed to make cutting-edge AI chips, marking a major step towards semiconductor self-sufficiency, developed in a high-security lab in Shenzhen and completed in early 2025. The machine was reverse engineered by former ASML engineers and now fills nearly an entire factory floor. It can generate EUV lights but has not yet produced working chips. China aims for success by 2028, though insiders say 2030 is more realistic. The project, described by Reuters as a Chinese Manhattan project, is backed by the government, coordinated in part by Huawei, and involves thousands of engineers operating under strict secrecy, recruitment of retired and overseas Chinese experts, aggressive incentives, and the reuse of parts from older Western machines have accelerated progress. Wow. So China is rapidly working towards being able to produce their own AI chips. Okay, because that's one of the big issues that China has, and why China wants to take Taiwan back is Taiwan has the huge chip factory. Okay, China does not have the capability of building their own chips, so they're working on that right now. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later on tonight with a live update, probably around 9 or 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you have your notifications turned on. Hit the bell icon down below. Make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel, and set up your notifications so you get notified when I post these updates. Also, you can download my free app from the Google Play Store for Android, and I send out alerts through the app if anything crazy is going on around the world. Also, when I post updates, so you never miss an update. You can also support me on Patreon. $5 a month gets you access to all these updates without any advertisements, plus abbreviated text updates, and you can directly message me. You can also follow me on Twitter and Telegram, and all the links are down below in the description. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP Shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP Shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video.